If you had told me, 38 years ago, that I would one day stand up in front of 200 people and hand my husband divorce papers while he was still holding his award, I would have laughed. I would have said, "Honey, that's not me. That's not how I was raised." And I would have been right, because that woman, the one who finally did it, took 38 years to become. My name is Meredith. I am 63 years old. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, and I make the best lemon pound cake in my neighborhood, which is the kind of thing a woman my age is supposed to be proud of. I am proud of it, but I'm prouder of what I did on the night of October 14th. At the Hartwell Industries Annual Excellence Gala, in front of my husband's colleagues, his boss, his board members, and the woman he had been sleeping with for 2 years. I want to tell you how it happened, not because I want your sympathy. I am past needing that. But because when I was living through it, I had no one to tell me it was going to be all right. I had no one sitting me down and saying, "Meredith, you are not crazy, and you are not weak, and you are allowed to fight back." So if you are the kind of woman who has been swallowing things for years, picking up the pieces quietly while someone else takes the credit for the house you built, this one is for you. My husband Leonard Hartley and I married in 1986. He was 28, I was 25. He had ambition the size of a barn and just enough charm to make you believe every word of it. I believed him. I believed in him, which is a different thing, and which cost me considerably more. In those early years, Leonard was working his way up through the corporate ladder at Hartwell Industries, a mid-sized manufacturing firm headquartered in Charleston. He started in logistics. I was working too, as a bookkeeper for a small law firm downtown. We didn't have much. We had a one-bedroom apartment on King Street with a radiator that clanked every night, and a kitchen, so small I had to turn sideways to open the oven. I didn't mind. We were building something. That's what I told myself every morning when I packed his lunch and ironed his shirts. We are building something together. We had 2 children. Our son, my son Garrison, was born in 1989. Our daughter, my daughter Priscilla, came along in 1992. By then, Leonard had been promoted twice, and we had moved to a house in Mount Pleasant. A real house, with a yard. I left my job when Priscilla was born because we agreed. Leonard and I agreed, together over the kitchen table, that it made more sense for me to stay home. The firm needed him to travel. The children needed consistency. I was the one who provided it. I don't say this to make Leonard a villain for those early years. He wasn't. He was a man who worked hard and came home tired and sometimes forgot to ask how my day was, and that is not a crime. That is just life. Ordinary marriage life. The kind that doesn't make headlines. What makes headlines is what happened in year 36. His name at the company had grown considerably by then. Leonard was Senior Vice President of Operations. He ran a department of 40-something people. He wore good suits. He traveled to conferences in cities I'd never been to. Denver, Seattle, Dallas. And he came home with stories about dinners at restaurants I couldn't pronounce. I stopped asking to come along sometime around 2017. He'd say the corporate events were not really my scene. And after a while I believed that too. Garrison had moved to Atlanta for work. He calls on Sundays when he remembers. Priscilla lives 20 minutes from me, and she is the reason I survived what came next. I first noticed something was wrong in the spring of 2022. It wasn't dramatic. No lipstick on the collar, no late-night texts I accidentally saw. It was smaller than that. He stopped touching me on the shoulder when he walked past. He started closing the bathroom door when he was on the phone. He began working out, which he had not done in 15 years, and bought new clothes without mentioning it. One evening I found a receipt in the pocket of his jacket while I was preparing it for the dry cleaner. Dinner for 2. The Harbor View Inn. A Tuesday night when he had told me he was eating at his desk. I sat with that receipt for a long time. I set it on the kitchen counter and looked at it like it might explain itself if I gave it long enough. Then I folded it up and put it in the back of my jewelry box, behind the strand of pearls my mother left me. I did not confront him. Not then. I know some people will read that and think I was a fool. Maybe I was. But I need you to understand something. When you have spent 36 years building a life with a person, when your children have his eyes and your savings account has both your names on it, and your whole understanding of yourself is tied up in that partnership, You don't just throw a receipt at him and demand answers. You get very, very quiet and you start paying attention. So I paid attention. Over the next several months, I began to understand the shape of what was happening. Her name, the woman's name, was Claudine Webb. She was 34 years old. She worked in Leonard's department as a project coordinator. I found her LinkedIn profile one night after dinner while Leonard was watching television in the next room. Her photo showed a woman with natural hair and a bright smile and a blazer. She looked competent. She looked like someone who went to the right conferences and knew how to work a room. I looked at that photo for a long time. I didn't hate her. That surprised me. What I felt was something colder and more precise than hate. It was recognition. I recognized what she was to him, and I recognized, with perfect clarity, what I had become. I called my daughter Priscilla the next morning. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long moment, and then she said, "Mom, how long have you known?" "A few months," I said. "And you didn't tell me." "I wasn't ready." She came over that afternoon. She sat at my kitchen table. The same table where Leonard and I had made all those decisions together. The ones that always seemed to favor his career and his schedule and his vision of the future. And she held my hands and she said, "What do you want to do?" I told her I didn't know yet. She said, "Okay, then we'll figure it out. But we are going to figure it out properly." Priscilla is 31 years old and works as a paralegal for a family law firm in Charleston. I mention that not as a coincidence but because it wasn't one. She knew exactly who to call. Over the following weeks, quietly and methodically, Priscilla helped me consult with an attorney. His name was Mr. Devlin Okafor, and he was the kind of man who spoke slowly and made you feel like you were the only person in the world with a problem worth solving. He explained to me very carefully what I was entitled to after 38 years of marriage. He explained the marital assets. He explained the retirement accounts. He explained the house and the pension and the investment portfolio that Leonard had always managed and always referred to, in conversation, as my money. It was not his money. Not entirely. Mr. Okafor made sure I understood that. We drafted the papers. I signed where I was supposed to sign. And then Mr. Okafor said, "When do you want to file?" I said, "Not yet." He looked at me carefully. "Is there something specific you're waiting for?" "Yes," I said. "There is." The Hartwell Industries Annual Excellence Gala had been on the calendar since January. Every year, Hartwell held this event, a formal dinner at the Charleston Marriott, 200 guests, a night of awards and speeches, and the kind of mutual congratulation that corporate culture runs on. Every year, Leonard attended. Every year, I attended as his wife. I sat at the table and smiled and made conversation, and never once took up too much space or said anything that might embarrass him. This year, Leonard was receiving the Hartwell Distinguished Leadership Award. He had told me about it in September with a kind of restrained pride that I recognized. He'd worn the same expression when Garrison made the honor roll in 4th grade. He said, "I'd like you to be there." I said, "Of course." I bought a new dress. Navy blue, floor-length with a slight shimmer to it. Priscilla came with me to pick it out. She stood outside the fitting room and handed me options, and when I came out in the navy one, she said, "Mom, that's the one." I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I looked like someone who had earned the right to walk into a room. In the weeks before the gala, I noticed Leonard behaving differently. He was nervous in a way he didn't quite know how to conceal. A tightness around the jaw. A tendency to check his phone and put it face down immediately. One evening he mentioned, almost casually, that Hartwell was bringing a larger team to the gala this year, some of the younger project staff. He said it the way people say things they want you to hear without seeming to want you to hear them. I said, "That's nice, Leonard." Priscilla came with me to the gala. I had told Leonard she was joining us, because Garrison couldn't make it down from Atlanta, and she wanted to be there to support her father. Leonard seemed pleased by this, which told me everything I needed to know about how little he understood the situation he was in. We arrived at the Marriott at 7 o'clock. The ballroom was everything you'd expect. Round tables with white linens, centerpieces with white orchids, a stage with a podium and soft gold lighting. A string quartet played near the entrance. Wait staff moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Leonard was already there, near the front of the room, speaking with his boss, Mr. Franklin Reese, the company's CEO. I watched him from across the room for a moment before he saw me. He was laughing at something, relaxed, in a way he hadn't been at home in months. He looked happy. That was the thing that settled into my chest like a stone. He looked genuinely happy. He saw me then and came over to greet us. He kissed my cheek. He told Priscilla she looked lovely. He was smooth about it, easy, the kind of smoothness that takes practice. We found our table. We sat down. The evening began. I don't remember much of the dinner itself. I remember the salmon was good. I remember Priscilla's hand finding mine under the table at some point and squeezing it, and I remember squeezing back. I remember watching the door. She arrived at 20 minutes past 7. I knew who she was the moment she walked in because I had spent enough months studying her face to recognize it in any light. Claudine Webb wore a burgundy dress and had her hair pinned up, and she walked through the room with the kind of ease that comes from knowing you belong somewhere. She went directly to the table on the far left side of the room, 2 tables away from ours, and sat down with a group of younger Hartwell employees. Leonard did not look at her. That was how I knew he had seen her. He was very deliberate about not looking. Priscilla leaned over and said quietly, "She's here, I know," I said. "Are you all right?" "I am perfectly fine." The awards portion of the evening began around 8:30. Mr. Franklin Reese took the stage first, spoke about the company's growth over the past year, thanked various people. 2 other awards were presented before Leonard's. One to a young woman in finance and one to the head of logistics. Then, Reese said, "Our final and most prestigious award this evening, the Hartwell Distinguished Leadership Award, goes to a man who has shaped the operational backbone of this company for over 2 decades. Leonard stood up from our table. He straightened his jacket. He had prepared remarks. I had seen him going over note cards at the kitchen counter 2 nights before, though he had not shown them to me or asked what I thought. He walked to the stage. He shook Mr. Reese's hand and accepted the award, a heavy-looking crystal plaque, and he stepped up to the microphone. I watched him begin to speak. I watched him thank Mr. Reese and the board and his team. He said something about dedication and about the privilege of working alongside talented people. His voice was even. He was good at this, public presence. He had always been good at this. And then he said, "Most of all, I want to thank the people in my life who have made this possible. The support I've received has meant everything." He did not say my name. He had said my name at every other company event I could remember. At the regional conference in 2009, he had said, "None of this is possible without my wife, Meredith, who is the foundation of everything." That was the year he got his first VP promotion. The year I had spent driving Garrison to college orientation weekends and managing the kitchen renovation almost entirely alone while Leonard traveled. He did not say my name. Priscilla's hand found mine again under the table. I reached down beside my chair. I picked up my evening bag. Inside it, folded once, was a sealed envelope. It had been in that bag since the previous Thursday, when Mr. Okafor had handed it to me and said, "Whenever you're ready." I had checked for it 3 times while getting dressed that evening, the way you check for your keys before leaving the house. I stood up. Priscilla stood up with me, and I touched her arm and said very quietly, "Sit down, sweetheart. This part is just for me." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she sat down. The applause for Leonard was beginning to build. People were putting down their glasses, straightening in their chairs to clap. And I walked from our table toward the stage. I walked the way I had always tried to walk, with my shoulders back, with my chin level. The navy dress was exactly right. I remember thinking that. I reached the steps at the side of the stage. Leonard was still behind the microphone, still basking in the moment, and he did not notice me until I was already on the stage, walking toward him. He turned. His face changed in a way I had never seen before, not just surprise, but a kind of rapid interior calculation, the look of a man who is trying to figure out what version of the situation he is in. The room had gone quiet. 200 people, and all of them were watching. I stopped in front of him. I looked at him the way you can only look at a person you have known for 38 years, with total clarity, and no performance, and nothing left to prove. I held out the envelope. "Leonard," I said. My voice was steady. I had practiced steady, and it was, "These are for you." He looked at the envelope. He looked at me. He didn't take it immediately, so I set it on top of the crystal plaque he was holding, and I stepped back. The room was absolutely silent. Then someone near the back, I don't know who, made a sharp sound, not quite a gasp, and the silence broke open into murmuring. I walked back down the steps. I walked to our table, picked up my small evening bag, and said to Priscilla, "Ready?" She was already standing. She put her arm through mine. We walked out of the ballroom together, and the doors closed behind us, and I stood in the carpeted hallway of the Charleston Marriott, and took a breath that felt like the first real breath I had taken in 2 years. "You were incredible," Priscilla said. "I was terrified," I told her. "I know." She squeezed my arm. "That's what made it incredible." The next several weeks were difficult in the way that all the practical, logistical parts of dismantling a long marriage are difficult. There were phone calls and meetings and paperwork. There were conversations with Garrison, who called from Atlanta confused and, I think, somewhat more loyal to his father than he wanted to admit, which hurt in the way that only your children can hurt you. He came around eventually. It took time, and it took Priscilla talking to him, and it took one long phone call between him and me where I said, very calmly, "Garrison, I am not asking you to choose. I am asking you to understand." He said he understood. I chose to believe him. Leonard tried to call me 3 times in the first week. I let it go to voicemail twice. The third time I answered, because I thought we should at least speak like adults, and I was right to. The conversation was short and strangely civil. He said he was sorry. I said I believed him. I meant it. Somewhere in there was a man I had loved, and I didn't need to hate what was left of him. I just needed to be done with it. I heard, through Priscilla, who heard through channels I didn't ask about, that Hartwell Industries had a morality clause in its executive contracts. Mr. Franklin Reese had called Leonard into his office the Monday after the gala. I don't know what was said exactly. What I do know is that Leonard's title quietly changed by November, and by the following spring he had taken what the company called a transition to an advisory role, which everyone understood to mean something else entirely. I won't pretend that piece of news didn't give me a certain amount of quiet satisfaction. It did. I am 63 years old and I have earned the right to be honestly human about that. Claudine Webb left Hartwell by January. I don't know where she went and it is not my concern. I bear her no lasting grudge. She did not make the vow to me, he did. The divorce was finalized in March. Mr. Okafor was as thorough as I had known he would be. The settlement was fair. Which is to say it accounted for 38 years of contributions that had never appeared on a pay stub. The school pickups, the dinner parties I arranged for his clients, the years I did not pursue my own accounting career so that his could flourish. The house is mine. A portion of the pension is mine. There is enough. There is, for the first time in a very long time, enough of everything. I have thought a great deal about what I would say to younger women who are living inside the story I lived. Women who are somewhere in year 10 or 20 or 30 of a marriage, where they have made themselves small so that someone else could be large. I am not here to tell you what to do. Your life is yours, and the calculus of it belongs to you alone. But I will say this. There is a particular kind of slow erosion that happens to a woman who spends decades prioritizing someone else's comfort over her own dignity. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in the small moments. The time you don't speak up at the dinner table. The opinion you swallow. The achievement you downplay so he doesn't feel overshadowed. And one day you look in the mirror, and the woman looking back at you has made herself so accommodating, so careful, so invisible, that you can barely find her. I found myself again. It took longer than it should have, but I found her, and she was wearing a navy dress, and she walked across a stage in front of 200 people, and she was not afraid. When I look back at that night now, the thing I return to most is not the moment I handed Leonard the envelope. It's the moment Priscilla and I walked out of those ballroom doors together, her arm through mine, and the way the sound of the room disappeared behind us. In that hallway there was nothing but quiet. Clean, open quiet. I had been so afraid for so many years of the silence that would come if I ever stopped holding everything together. I had been afraid of the empty house, the empty chair across the table, the absence of a person I had oriented my entire life around. I thought that silence would be a kind of death. It wasn't. It was the opposite. My daughter Priscilla calls me every morning now, just to check in. Not because I'm fragile, I am not fragile, but because we have developed a habit of talking in the mornings, and neither of us wants to stop. Some mornings we talk for 20 minutes about nothing in particular. Some mornings we solve each other's small problems. Some mornings she just says, "Good morning, Mom. How'd you sleep?" And I say, "Better than I have in years." And I mean it every time. I am 63 years old. I make the best lemon pound cake in my neighborhood. I have a daughter who stood up with me when it counted, and a son who is slowly learning what I need him to understand, and a house that is entirely and completely mine, and a life that is finally, after all this time, pointed in a direction I chose. If you were standing where I stood, at that table, holding that envelope, watching the man you gave your life to accept an award without speaking your name, what would you have done? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story stayed with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today.